Good evening, everyone. This is a special meeting of the Finance Committee of the Village of Burnham, Cook County, Illinois. I would like to call the meeting to order. Actually, that's the mayor's job. Roll call, Trustee Cap, I'm here. Trustee Greer.
Here.
Trustee Richardson had emergency incident just came up, so she's not gonna be able to make it. And the Mayor Polk is present. The opening of the meeting to the public to address the Finance Committee with any comments pursuant to ILCS 120-2.06G. So I'd like to open the meeting to the public. We have to make a motion. Said opening the meeting to the public. Yeah, it did say that. The agenda says that. Okay. So I'll make a motion to open the meeting to the public. Let's do roll call. Trustee Cap, yes. Trustee Greer?
Yes, here.
And Mayor Polk? Yes. All right, so we have 3 yeses. Do we have anything from the public? We're just following the agenda. It looks a little bit out of place, but we'll go with it. So we have no comments. Then I make a motion to close the meeting to the public. Let's do a roll call. Trustee Cap, yes. Trustee Greer?
Yes.
Mayor Polk?
Yes.
We have 3 yeses. Okay, now we're gonna have a presentation by Lauterbach and Amen, LLP, the Village of Burnham's current auditing company, of the audit report and management letter for the fiscal year ending 2020.
That's me.
You're up.
I'm happy to take my mask off to present if that's okay. So good evening, everybody. My name is Courtney Clement. I am the auditor from Lauterbach and Amen LLP. I have been working with the Village of Burnham for a few years now, and I appreciate you guys having me here to present the audit. I first want to say thank you to Christina and everybody who helped her with preparing the audit and getting it ready for us. We recognize that it is a lot to put together, so thank you very much for all of your help. So I'm going to start in the front with the Independent Auditors Report, which states our opinion. In our opinion, the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects, which is known as an unmodified opinion, also known as a clean opinion. It is the highest opinion that we can give. Once we get past the Independent Auditors Report, we do have the management's discussion and analysis. I highly recommend, if you don't read anything in this report, definitely read the management's discussion and analysis. It does present all the information in non-financial terms that makes it a little bit easier to understand. Once we get past the management's discussion and analysis, we start our basic financial statements. We have our statement of net position, which shows the assets and liabilities in net position for the governmental and business type funds. Past that is the statement of activities, which shows the expenses and program revenues for the governmental and business type funds. We do notice a little bit of a decrease in net position from last year to this year for both governmental and business type activities. Nothing too major. Once we get past all of the financial statements, we do have the notes to the financial statements. It does describe everything you possibly need to know about the financial statements, so I do recommend taking a look and reading through it to understand, the basis of presentation. Capital asset details are in there, debt details are in there, everything in a much more detailed fashion than just the financial statements.
So what would be your definition of a capital asset for the village?
A capital asset on the village?
Yeah.
Something that better enhances the village and has a long useful life that would be utilized by the village. Obviously, we do take thresholds into consideration. So we don't want to capitalize anything that's super, super small because it just kind of defeats the purpose of depreciating the asset over X amount of years. So in the report, if you go to page 32, it does talk about the useful lives of capital assets as well as the cost So we do capitalize for the Village of Burnham, anything over $2,000 individually. We don't look at the aggregate, we look at individual items, and then depreciate them over the years that are listed in this note.
Well, I know in terms of funds, in terms of capital funds, we look at things like concrete, structural, things that are permanent, it's considered a capital.
Mm-hmm.
Capital funds to spend on. So I was trying to make a comparison.
Yes, yes. So if it's something like, when you mention concrete, I think of maybe just making it better, the parking lot, or something has already been there and you're just enhancing it. But if you're building a new building, adding an addition on, that's when you can kind of take a look at actually capitalizing the asset.
Okay.
Any other questions so far? So like I mentioned, all of the notes detail out everything super great if you need to get into any of that. Past the notes, we do have the required supplementary information. It does detail employer contributions to the police pension fund and other assumptions and things that are necessary related to the pension fund. And past all the required supplementary information, we do have the other supplementary information which details all the individual funds and actuals versus budget, so you can see where your budget landed compared to the actuals for the year.
Well, I have another comment. So with the police pension fund,
Mm-hmm.
it was underfunded, I guess, per se, but the amount that we levy, we don't always collect that for that fiscal year.
Right.
And so it always kind of lags a little bit on that.
Right.
Also, probably not quite high enough as it should be to begin with. So that's a little double whammy.
Sure, something to consider, for sure. So, and it does show from 4/30/16 to 4/30/20, so you can see all the differences, and kind of where you're at with covered payroll. So, and that's on page 52 to 53. So that is a very high overview of the financials. If you have any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them while I'm here. Or if you come up with anything once you leave, I know that that's typically how questions come up. Feel free to reach out to Christina and she can get them over to me. As far as the management letter goes, nothing really new. The only thing is just funds over budget. So something to consider when putting your budget together. That's the, yes, the smaller bound one. The only current recommendation we had for this year was the general motor fuel tax and water funds were all over budget when looking at the final numbers.
What is that based on, over budget?
The budget and appropriations ordinance that is passed, we take a look at the funds versus the expenses and revenues, well, expenses mostly, that was passed and submitted to the county.
Okay, but I think the figure that I saw in here was like, 149,000, 100 something. But that was only for one line item.
Did you guys pass a separate, budget amendment for that?
And for the MFT is itemized.
Right.
It's itemized for sidewalk, it's itemized for tree removal,
We
tree
can,
improvement.
It might be the water meters, the cost of
it's
the water
probably
meters.
the water meters, yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
for the water fund. And that would have been an
It's in the T.
approval of the project, but not funded because you didn't know before you funded it that you were gonna fund it.
Yeah.
So, which is no big deal. I mean, we understand why they're out of budget. We can
Yep.
say we concur they were out of budget, and we have legislation saying why they're out of budget, so we're all good, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you recognize it, there's really nothing.
Yeah, and we know why we're out of budget. We had
Right,
an
exactly.
unfunded project that we put on the books to
Right, something to.
make the city better, which is what, the village better, which is the goal.
And so
Right.
in your professional and financial opinion, then would you say, or should I say, what would you say the status of the village of Burnham finances are?
That's a really tough question to answer, because there are a lot of different things that take into consideration, and it's kind of hard to compare the village to other places that we work with, because everybody's so unique and individual, so I can't
I don't
really
mean
give.
compare, but I mean just what you see in here.
It's kind of hard to give an opinion on that. We just really give an opinion on whether the financials are stated properly and fairly. As far as what it is, if it's in good nature, that would be something to kind of discuss amongst yourselves. So.
That's the right answer.
Well, we know it's improved, we just want to see what you want to say. That's
I can't really give an opinion on that.
You're asking an auditor to give an opinion.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any other questions while I'm here?
You got a question, Trustee Williams?
Is the income statement and the financial statement the same?
Yes, the financial statements are just the overall statements. The income statements are included in there, and the income statements for the individual funds are all the way in the back.
Oh, okay.
But they're called something else. I don't think, well, we might call the ones in the back. But they've got different names in the front.
They do. Statement of net position.
Yeah, they're funky, you can't always use the same title
Okay.
name.
Right.
So,
right.
but when you see income and expense, that's an income statement, and when you see assets and liabilities, that's a balance sheet.
Okay.
It's just everybody has to put their little mark on it in accounting, that's the way we like it.
It's Gatsby being Gatsby.
Yeah, the government geeks needed some help.
Yes,
So they
exactly.
named their own financials.
Yes.
That's a good example of a negative pool cash.
Negative pooled cash.
Yeah.
So if you have commingled cash throughout all of your different funds, at the end of it, there are certain funds that may have negative balances in those funds. And so we would have to take a look at your cash flow with your other funds. And overall, if there's a negative pooled cash amount, that's something that we would point out in the management letter.
So the goal would be their part of the pool would never go mine.
Right.
But we know we've always kind of had a problem with getting our funds balanced. So that's something to work toward, and a pretty easy fix.
We've started that too recently.
We've started it by moving money from where we lent it to get it back, you know.
And actually, if you read the status, this comment has been implemented and will not be repeated in the
Right.
future. So in 2019, the general fund cash balance was negative $226,000. But once we got to 2020, it was not negative. So we did update the status on that comment. So you are working towards fixing that.
Yeah, we just want the people of the village of Burnham to know that we run an orderly operation.
Absolutely.
I'd like to say something about the auditors. You guys have done an amazing job
Oh, thank
over
you.
the last 4 years. I just see this report getting better and better. And you know, Christina works very hard to do everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, and I've said this and I'm gonna put it on the record, I think if we could get one more staff head in that city hall and put her in a room so she can actually be a finance manager without having to be a clerk at the front window, you can take it to the next step. Even if it's a 3/4 position or a half position, it would be enough for her to have finance time. And it's important to have that. You can't stretch it too thin. That's when defalcation happens. That's when all the things go south. So, a really great job on the
Thank you.
report. It's close to a CAFR, you know, it's really.
It could get there.
It's really, we're like, and that means like awards and, you know, stuff
Something to
like.
consider for sure.
You're this close.
Yeah.
We
Thank you
tried
very
to
much.
part them, she almost keeping you out.
Well, you're not what we're looking for, Mayor, so. You're a man on the street, not in the accounting office.
I have a question.
Sure.
Then going back to the investment policy, once an investment policy is written, how often should it be reviewed?
Every few years or so, probably, just to make sure you are following the policy and if any changes need to be made. So if it hasn't been reviewed in quite some time, I would definitely consider it.
Okay.
Could they simply adopt the state policy for cities?
You know,
Could they,
that's
could
sure.
they simply just by resolution, you know what, we're gonna take state law and make it our law?
Sure.
Because we're in the state.
Yeah, you know, I'm not too sure. We typically suggest having your own investment policy, and we do have some templates for that as well if you need to see any kind of updates or
Right.
anything like
Right,
that.
you've given them to us, yeah.
Yeah, so just something to consider.
It's easy stuff though. it's better to just kind of stay within the state law or under it.
Mhm.
It's always best, if you see something in the state law that you don't like, you just scratch it out. Throw it in on your, that way it's just easier.
Sure.
Same thing with some of those other policies. If they scare people and people doing the work, buying the stuff and fixing the cars and they sometimes get nervous when you start throwing policies at them, but
Right,
gotta do it.
right.
All right, you're all good? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Hey, Courtney, really great job.
Thank
you.
Take care.
Yes, yes. It's been a bad year for me. It's okay.
Got the motion approved by trustee Cap to adjourn.
I'll do roll call. Trustee Cap, yes. Trustee Greer.
Yes.
Mayor Pope.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Meeting adjourned.